Effingham 911.
Help! Please!
What's wrong?
I'm shot.
You're shot.
Yes.
Linda Heidt could barely talk.
How did you get shot, ma'am?
I don't know.
Don't know?
No.
Andre! Get James! 1018! Hurry up! Where did you get shot at?
Sir?
In your face?
Yes.
It was no surprise that the dispatcher could hardly make out what Linda was saying. Nearly half of her face had been blown off by a shotgun. Her jaw and chin were gone. The dispatchers could hear the gurgle sound of blood in her throat as she tried to talk, and a hole had been ripped straight through her shoulder. But she was miraculously still breathing, still calling for help.
Husband. Shot. Two.
Your husband shot too?
Yes.
Okay, is there anybody in the house with you besides you and your husband?
Yes.
Who else is in the house with you?
Son.
Your son?
Yes.
Did he get shot too, or you don't know?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
What's your name, sweetie?
Linda.
Linda?
As emergency responders arrived, they found Linda slumped over, holding a cloth against her face. When they peeled it back, much of her neck was missing. As she swallowed, they could see her throat moving. As first responders raced to keep Linda alive, police were unaware that they had stepped right into the middle of a twisted disaster against the last family they would ever have suspected. Welcome back to Crime A to Z, where we detail cases and criminals from their very beginning until well after other reporting ends. Today, we're diving into a case that shattered a Southern dynasty. Not over money alone, but something far, far more personal. A scandal with no shortage of suspects, secrets, or shame. Shout out to CoXR for recommending this case. We blacked out the spoilers, but it's definitely as twisted as you said. So sit back as we dive into the case of the Heidt Family Murders. Let's go. To understand how Linda Heidt ended up clinging to life, her jaw blown off, and a hole torn through her shoulder, you have to first understand who she was, who her family was, and just how much power and pressure was packed inside the walls of their home. In the heart of Effingham County, Georgia, a rural area with just 2 stoplights, one name carried more weight than any other. The name Heidt. Philip Heidt wasn't just a successful real estate developer. He was the real estate developer. His company closed multi-million-dollar deals with Ford, the U.S. Postal Service, Chevrolet, and Tractor Supply. He was the top commercial agent in his area for 21 straight years and ranked 3 times as the best in the entire state of Georgia. But power and profit were not what defined Philip. He was a deeply principled man with firm values, rooted in his Christian faith and his local ties. He served on the church council, was a lifetime active member of his Lutheran church, and worked tirelessly to improve Effingham County, including sitting on boards, leading the local Chamber of Commerce, and working as a traffic and planning manager. He later worked as a federal land bank officer and eventually retired as a technical sergeant from the Air Force after 20 years of service. He was also a cattle farmer, a baseball lover, and a grandfather to 7 grandchildren, who he described as his greatest pride and joy. Through it all, he and his wife, Linda, remained a team. They had met at a county fair in the 1960s. The romance was fast, but it stuck. They married soon after and spent the next 41 years building a picture-perfect life. 3 sons, a booming business, and the 7 grandchildren. Linda was described as a traditional Southern Belle housewife and homemaker. She was quiet, composed, and fiercely devoted to her family. She took care of the home, supported Philip's growing empire, and raised their boys with faith and discipline. Their oldest, Craig, had a bit of a wild streak. He lived a carefree, often impulsive life. He was divorced with 2 children and behind on his child support payments. Chris, the middle son, stayed more in the background. He was married with children and lived a quiet, steady life, rarely drawing attention to himself. And Carrie, the youngest, was Philip's shadow. He worked alongside his dad and was groomed to inherit the family business. Carrie had a family of his own, a wife, Robin, and 3 young children. By all outward appearances, the Heidts were untouchable, a family who had it all and shared it generously with the community.
Effingham 911.
Help, please.
What's wrong?
Gunshot.
When officers arrived, they approached a pitch-dark house. Their weapons were drawn since they were uncertain whether the shooter was still inside. As they approached the home, they could hear Linda inside, moaning in pain. Once they were inside, they were immediately hit by the overwhelming smell of gasoline. It was everywhere. There was so much of it on the floor that one of the officers slipped and nearly fell. The fumes were so strong it was hard to even breathe. And since nothing was actually on fire, police began to worry that it might be an ambush. Perhaps someone might be waiting nearby, ready to drop a match and trap them inside.
Okay, is there anybody in the house with you besides you and your husband?
Yes.
Who else is in the house with you?
Son.
Your son?
Yes.
Linda was right. There were two more people in the home. Carrie, the youngest son, was in a spare bedroom, shot in the face execution style as he slept. Police determined that he was the first to be shot. Police discovered Linda's husband Philip in the master bedroom, also shot in the face execution style with a bedsheet drawn in front of him in a futile attempt to shield himself. Forensics would later show that he had sat up in his bed, likely after hearing the gunshot that had killed his son. A bullet hole through the sheet made clear that the shooter fired through it, striking Philip as he tried to defend himself. It was painfully clear to responders that neither Carrie nor his father had survived the highly destructive gunshot blasts to their heads. Police noted that when a person is shot with a shotgun, the blasts are so destructive, there's usually not much of that part of the person left. Linda had coincidentally been in the bathroom when the attack began. As she emerged from the bathroom, the killer turned and shot her through the door. She was struck in the face, neck, and shoulder. When emergency responders found her in the hallway, Linda had wrapped a shirt around her lower jaw in an attempt to slow the bleeding. Beneath it, her jaw, chin, and neck were gone. Responders were shocked she was still alive, let alone able to still speak.
And she had some sort of fabric, a t-shirt or a towel on her throat, and it was soaked in blood. I asked her to remove the cloth from her throat so I can get a visual of her injuries. The entire area of her neck here was missing. As she swallowed, you could see her throat moving.
As Linda was rushed to the hospital, police turned their attention to the scene. With the Heidts being one of the most prominent families in Effingham County, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation was called in almost immediately. The GBI agent assigned to the case noted that the brutality at the scene was the worst he had ever seen. At first glance, the scene had all the classic signs of a robbery gone wrong. The window portion of the glass door had been shattered near the doorknob, gasoline had been poured through the halls, shotgun shells matched the kind kept in the Heidts' own home, and two men had been executed inside. But it didn't take long for investigators to realize that it didn't add up. The glass near the doorknob had been broken, implying that there was forced entry. But the curtain that covered the window behind the glass remained untouched, which meant that no one had actually reached through. A key was still in the double-sided deadbolt. More on that in a moment. And most importantly, nothing had been taken. Wallets, watches, jewelry, even money clips full of cash were all left in plain sight. Given that shotguns were commonly used for hunting in their rural area, it wasn't unusual that a shotgun was used for the murders. However, there were no shell casings left at the scene. Investigators said they found it unusual that a burglar would take the time to clean up after themselves. This was not a robbery. Someone wanted it to look like a break-in, but their real goal wasn't theft. It was murder. And with Linda barely hanging on in intensive care, the question at the heart of it all was who wanted the Heidt family dead. So, investigators began reaching out to the other family members, hoping that one of them would know who might want to bring harm to them. The first stop was Carrie's wife, Robin. Just a few short hours after the shooting, police arrived at her door to tell her the unthinkable, that her husband had been killed. Robin had been married to Carrie for years. They were high school sweethearts, now raising 3 young kids of their own. Carrie had followed in his father's footsteps, working as a real estate agent in nearby Rincon. He was known for being kind, hardworking, and family-focused. He loved hunting, boating, and horses. But most of all, he loved his time with his kids. Even as the real estate market took the downturn, Cary kept his head down and worked to support his family. By all accounts, he was steady, loyal, and committed. Not the kind of person who had enemies. Through tears, Robin recounted that Cary had gone to visit his parents around 4 p.m. the day before. That evening, he had called around 8:30 to say goodnight to the kids. Everything had seemed perfectly normal. When the investigator asked if there was anyone at all who might want to harm her husband or his parents, Robin shook her head. She could not think of a single person. They wrapped up their conversation, and Robin asked the investigators if anyone had told the oldest son, Craig, yet. They had not, so they went to break the news to him as well. Craig had once worked in the family's real estate business, but by 2008, as the financial crisis was still unfolding and industries and individuals began to spiral, Craig's life was sliding downhill right along with it. Craig began spending his days hunting, laying low, and dating.
She said, "You're seeing my husband?" And I said, "No, ma'am, I'm not. I'm not dating anybody's husband." And she said, "Yes, you are." And I said, "Well, tell me who your husband is." And she said, "Craig Heidt." And I said, "Well, wait a minute. I guess maybe I am." And I told him, "Well, you need to go home, take care of your business, get your divorce, stay with your wife, do whatever you're going to do."
As things continued to crumble, Craig lost his marriage. He lost custody of his children, and the real estate momentum that he had once shared with his father and brother had stalled out completely. Investigators locate Craig several miles away, staying at a friend's hunting cabin. When officers arrived, Craig was distraught. He shared with investigators that he had been at the cabin since the previous early evening and learned about the murders later that morning. With the son still clearly grief-stricken, investigators wrap up their questions and move on. Authorities don't have much to go on. But what they did learn early on was that the Heidt's real estate empire was not as bulletproof as it looked from the outside. In fact, Philip's business was in serious trouble. The 2008 financial crisis that was still unfolding at the time of the murders had already begun to unravel Craig's life, and it was hitting the other Heidts hard too. Their once steady stream of multi-million-dollar real estate deals had slowed, shaking their dominance in the local market. With so many people losing money, homes, and credit, the downturn had opened up a long list of people who might have held a grudge, including developers, clients, bankers, and business partners. Anyone who might have been burned by a bad deal or failed investment. With the kind of money the Heidts were known to handle, one broken contract or fractured relationship could easily represent millions of dollars, and perhaps a motive for murder. So investigators started digging into debts, lawsuits, business deals, and disputes. They found plenty of contention, but nothing that suggested the kind of deep animosity it would take to carry out execution-style killings. The break-in had clearly been staged, the gasoline deliberately poured, and the attack carried out with precision. This was not a business deal gone wrong. It was something personal. And if it was something personal, authorities had to keep looking inward, turning next to the last remaining son, Chris. The quiet middle child of the family, Chris had always stayed out of the spotlight. Investigators paid him a visit and described him as devastated beyond belief. He told police that he had been at his parents' house around 4 p.m. the day before the murders, the same time that Cary had arrived. But Chris had left before the evening to help get his kids to bed and stayed home the rest of the night. His wife backed up his account completely. Nothing about Chris raised alarm bells. But he did offer something helpful. He mentioned that Philip had once called police to report a man who lived just a mile down the road. A known meth user, his father's call led to the man being sent to prison for 3 years. If Philip had interfered with someone's drug pipeline, especially one that led to prison time, that could easily be motive for revenge. Investigators looked into it, but after digging into the man's background and current behavior, they were confident that he was not involved. There was no lingering animosity, no threats, and no connection to the crime. A solid lead, but ultimately, a dead end. With nothing definitive to go on, police were considering every possible lead, even the ones that sounded bizarre. One such tip came from a woman in Effingham County who said she had received a phone call in the middle of the night, right around the time the murders had likely taken place. The voice on the other end was hard to make out, but she clearly remembered the words. The job is done. That was all. Given the timing, she figured it might be connected to the highly publicized murders, so she called the sheriff's office and reported it. Police couldn't afford to dismiss anything, so they pulled phone records, traced the call, and started digging. They learned that the caller had been working a shift at a local restaurant and was simply letting someone know that the job was done. But he had called the wrong number. Another dead end. As investigators continued combing through the details of the crime scene, one element stood out more than most: the key in the door. They learned that it was a spare key, but it wasn't a typical house key left under a doormat. There was a spare that was kept in an unusual spot, tucked into a narrow notch above one of the doors off the carport, hidden well enough that even a seasoned burglar would never have stumbled across it by chance. They also learned that only a small handful of people even knew that it existed, so the fact that it had been removed from its hiding place and used to enter the home on the night of the murders instantly narrowed investigators' focus. Whoever had done this had not forced their way in. They had let themselves in. And they were on a short list. Who was on the list? The few key family members that investigators already knew, and a man named John Henry Rast, Robin Heidt's brother. He had never come up before. In addition to being Robin's brother, he was also very good friends with Carrie. He had spent plenty of time on Philip and Linda's property and often did handyman work for the family, so his awareness of the key was justified. Investigators tracked him down, and it didn't take long to confirm his alibi. He had been about 2.5 hours away in South Carolina celebrating his first wedding anniversary. Additionally, his grief over Carrie's death appeared deep and genuine. Investigators found no reason to doubt him. They crossed him off the list. But the key had still helped authorities narrow their focus down to a very small number of people. Investigators began asking around, and rumors began to surface, mostly about Robin. People close to the family were saying that there had been tension long before the murders, and that Robin might have been having an affair. And not just with anyone. It was with Craig. An affair would be the all-too-common starting point for murder. Investigators approached Robin and asked her about the affair. She didn't hesitate. She admitted the affair and said that it had been going on for months. She would later recall.
He spent a lot of time at work, a lot less time at home. He became very distant with me. I wasn't really sure why. I didn't realize that the real estate business was not going as well as it had been going. I knew there were some problems, but there was a lot of problems and he didn't discuss them with me. So we became pretty distant as far as our marriage relationship.
How did you think your life was going to improve by engaging in this relationship with Craig?
Well, at the time I felt like Craig was giving me some attention and giving me some things that Carrie wasn't giving me. And at the time, I felt like that was where I needed to be, was with Craig. In April of 2008, I engaged in a relationship with his older brother, Craig. I just told Craig that there was something I needed to tell him, and he listened, and I told him that I had feelings for him, and he said that he had feelings for me, and that was about as far as the conversation went that day.
Did you and Craig have an intimate relationship that night?
We did.
Where was that?
That was in Philip and Linda's living room.
Where were Philip and Linda?
They were asleep.
Robin said that Carrie was aware of the affair.
How did he find out in May about the affair?
I told him.
How did he act when you told him?
He was upset. He was very upset. And he said that if I was going to have an affair, he wished it would have been with anybody else except his brother. He was very upset about it being his brother.
This changed everything. Authorities now wonder if Carrie, not Philip, may have been the main target. Robin said that she was at home all night, and phone records supported that. Authorities question Craig and get the complete opposite reaction. He denies having a relationship with Robin.
Craig, have you been totally honest with me throughout this whole investigation?
Yes, sir.
About everything?
Yes, sir. I've tried to be. I've been mind-boggled, but what do you think I've been dishonest about?
Well, for one, I think you've been dishonest about your relationship with Robin. It being a
relationship. I know that it looks bad, but I'm going to tell you something. I couldn't do that to my brother. I could not do that to my brother.
What if I said Robin said she was having sex with you?
No, sir.
Is she imagining this?
That's not true, sir. I'm being truthful with you.
Then somebody's not being truthful with you.
I am being truthful with you.
If she loves you, wouldn't it be easier for her to just kill Carrie and then you and her could be together forever?
There is no way Robin had anything to do with this. I swear to you on my mama's life, she has never said anything like that. Never.
What do you want me to do
I want you
when we catch this person?
I want you to put them away.
Put them away.
Yes, sir.
That's your wishes.
Yes, sir. From the bottom of my heart, put them away.
Even if it's Robin.
Even if it's Robin.
Before investigators even ask him anything related to the murders, out of nowhere, Craig volunteers the oddly specific detail that his shotgun, boots, and gas can are missing.
The 12 gauge is not there. I have one pair of snake bite boots that are not there.
With Robin already admitting to the affair and phone records backing her up, Craig's denials did not add up. Investigators gave him a polygraph, which he failed. Faced with the evidence, Craig finally admitted that he had indeed been in a relationship with his brother's wife. Now they were getting somewhere. Investigators pulled harder on that thread. They discovered that Linda was the one who told Philip about the affair. Philip was devastated, not just because of the betrayal, but because he knew it would rip his family apart. He asked Robin to meet with him directly. When they met, he demanded that she end the affair with Craig. Tensions were high.
Philip was very angry and upset with me. Philip said, look around you. These are things that Craig cannot give you. These are things that only Carrie can give you. And he said, you don't understand how Craig is. He has issues that you don't understand. And that upset me. I said, I'm leaving. I'm getting in the car and I'm leaving. So I got in my Suburban and the window was rolled down and I went to crank my car. And Mr. Phillip reached in and snatched my keys and pushed my arm out of the way.
Robin said that she had never seen Philip that angry. Philip also confronted Craig, telling him that what he was doing would devastate the family. He told Craig that if he did not break off the affair, he would cut him out of the will. No inheritance. If there had ever been any doubt about a motive for Craig to commit murder, that doubt was starting to fade. But if Craig was responsible, it meant that he didn't just shoot his brother and father. He also pulled the trigger on his mother. The level of violence against all three was hard to reconcile. But Craig wasn't the only one with a motive. Robin had also been backed into a corner. She couldn't be ruled out. Still, investigators had their money on Craig. They were confident he was behind the killings. However, with no eyewitnesses, physical evidence, or murder weapon, building a case against him would not be easy. Fortunately, investigators had an ace up their sleeves. They knew that the recoil from the type of shotgun used in the murder was strong enough to leave bruising on the shooter's body. So now, 4 days after the murders, they asked Craig to remove his shirt. Before doing so, he volunteered that he had recently bruised himself getting out of the bathtub. Once again, answering a question that no one had asked him. Craig removed his shirt to reveal a total of 3 bruises, 2 on his right bicep and 1 on his left. The same number of shots fired at the home that night. Investigators were now positive that they had their shooter. With their focus narrowed, they began looking into the family's interactions prior to the shooting. Leading up to the murders, Carrie and Philip had begun investigating whether the affair between Craig and Robin was real. Carrie had placed a GPS tracker on Robin's car, started the process of removing her from his will, and had secretly removed her as a beneficiary from his $3.5 million life insurance policy. The man was heartbroken, but not naive. That tracking confirmed what they had feared. Just before the murders, Robin had spent the weekend with Craig at that remote cabin. Philip went so far as to have a friend with a private helicopter fly over the cabin and take photos of the couple in their cars to prove they were seeing each other. The couple awoke to the sound of the low-flying helicopter circling above them. And Robin immediately knew they were being watched, and who was behind it. The family's unraveling wasn't just emotional anymore, it was turning tactical.
What did Craig say about the affair?
That if he wanted Robin, he would have Robin.
What was his attitude at the time with regards to that?
He was kind of arrogant.
That night while I was there, he made the comment that if Carrie and Philip weren't careful, that he would play old school on them.
Do you understand what he meant by that?
I did not.
What Craig was most upset about was the fact that he had been caught. He had been able to deny the affair to his dad in the past, but with his dad now spying on him, he knew the jig was up. When Robin returned home that Sunday after spending the weekend with Craig, Carrie confronted her. They had a heated argument. Robin asked Carrie about the helicopter, and he confirmed that it was part of his and his dad's effort to get proof of their affair. After the conversation, Carrie needed some space. Once Carrie left, Robin called Craig and told him about the conversation, including confirming the purpose of the helicopter, and that Carrie was going to stay the night with his parents. When Carrie arrives at his parents' home, he asks his middle brother Chris to witness him signing a new will that has Robin removed. Chris said he didn't have time and that he'd do it later. But later would never come. Weeks after the shooting, Linda finally began to recover. Her injuries had been catastrophic. The 57-year-old woman had undergone her mouth being wired shut, bone grafts, skin grafts, and major reconstructive work just to stabilize her. She could not speak for a long time. But eventually, she opened her eyes. And once she did, everyone wanted to know whether she knew who did this. Linda said she did not. Her middle son Chris came to visit her as she healed. The two shared a calm, comforting reunion. Chris was still shaken, but they sat together quietly, and it seemed to bring Linda peace. Then Craig came to visit, and everything changed. From the moment he stepped into the room, Linda's monitors went haywire. Her blood pressure spiked. Her heart rate soared. Nurses could see the shift immediately. Craig only stayed for a few minutes, and as soon as he left, her vitals returned to normal. And that wasn't all. Investigators also learned from medical staff that when Craig first found out that Linda was expected to survive, he looked physically ill. Not relieved, not scared, just ill. Investigators could not prove what Linda felt in that room, but her body seemed to be speaking for her. Given that all the evidence against Craig was circumstantial, investigators knew they had to build a solid case. They started with Robin. While she was willing to cooperate with the investigation, she was adamant that Craig could not have done it, quoting Craig's own insistence that, "I could not do that to my brother." But police are certain that she's wrong given the evidence, which included the missing boots, shotgun, and gas can missing from Craig's shed, which he conveniently told investigators about unprompted. Investigators also learned that about a week before the murders, Craig had met with a realtor to look into buying property for himself and Robin. Unemployed at the time, he was in no financial position for such a purchase, but he told the realtor he expected to come into some money soon. He even added that he would inherit significant money from his parents upon their death. Then there were what investigators and experts were certain were shotgun recoil bruises on Craig's arms, which Craig passionately insisted, even demonstrated, were the result of a fall in the bathroom.
I stepped out like this with my right foot came out, I fell like that right there and landed on the commode like that right there. When I landed, I kind of landed, you know, like hugging like that's this right here. Okay. Type thing.
And, although typically not admissible in court, the results of Craig's failed polygraph test backed up what investigators already suspected. When asked, "Were you holding a shotgun when your parents were killed?" Craig responded, "No," but his answer measured as deceptive. And instead of replying no when asked if he had killed his father and brother and shot his mother in the face, Craig said he didn't know. Then he said that if he did, he didn't have any memory of it. And of course, there was the affair. With all three people who stood in the way of Craig and Robin's relationship targeted, Craig stood to gain everything, including inheriting a portion of the family estate. With his parents dead, the threat of being cut out of the will was also eliminated. Full freedom to pursue a public relationship with Robin, without interference from his parents or Carrie. And even full access to Carrie's assets and life. And for that last item, they figured, why wait? Originally, Robin was uncertain about continuing her relationship with Craig.
I saw Craig there, and I went over to him and I said, I want you to look at me and tell me if you've done this or not. And he said no. He asked me if our relationship was going to remain how it had been. And I told him that I wasn't sure at that time.
But at some point, her feelings obviously softened. While the investigation was underway, police were surveilling Craig's every move. As a result, they observed that Craig had moved in with Robin, cashing in on that last potential motive of claiming everything that had once belonged to his brother. Craig was sleeping in Carrie's bed and driving his truck. He sat in Carrie's chair at dinner and took his kids to school. He and Robin had even begun looking at wedding rings.
We went and looked at rings one time, and when we went to look at them, they were on sale. So we went ahead and purchased the rings.
He paid for them.
I did.
At the end of the school year, the couple had made plans to move and start a new life in South Carolina. They would not get that chance. In May 2009, nearly 9 months after the murders, police were ready to move. After months of quiet surveillance, the GBI arrested Craig Heidt. The arrest shocked those who still believed he was innocent. But authorities were confident. The motive, the evidence, and the chain of events all pointed to Craig. Unable to resist the controlling, unemployed, child support-owing brother living off of disability checks, Robin began the affair with Craig in April of 2008. By all accounts, she initiated the relationship during a time she felt emotionally disconnected from Carrie. She testified that Carrie was spending more time at work and was emotionally unavailable, which left her feeling alone. To pull off the murders, Craig needed to make sure the 3 people who were trying to sabotage the affair and cut him out of the will were all at the same place at the same time. His opportunity came when Robin called and told him that Carrie had left to go spend the night with his parents. It was Craig's perfect opportunity. He used the spare key hidden in the carport to enter the home. He shot Carrie first, followed by Philip, and then Linda.
I heard a very loud noise or blast. So I went out and went in the bedroom and I said, Philip. And when I said that, I saw a blast when Philip was shot. And then I saw the blast as I was shot. And I must have blacked out. I remember waking up and I was laying on the floor and I saw my teeth laying on the floor. And I must have blacked out again. And I woke up praying. I said, God, if we're going to do this, I need your strength because I have none of my own.
The bullet that hit Linda first struck her face, then continued through her shoulder. He then doused the floor with gasoline, likely to stage or destroy evidence. But as he prepared to light it, he suddenly heard Linda talking on the phone. He couldn't tell how long she had been talking or whether she had managed to reach someone nearby like Chris, who lived just a mile away. He panicked and fled the scene, ditching the plan to light the fire and forgetting to remove the spare key from the door. With no physical findings and a case built on circumstantial evidence, the prosecution faced an uphill battle. But they were confident. Craig had motive, namely his secret affair with his brother's wife and the looming threat of being cut out of the will. He had opportunity since he was the only person known to have access to the spare key that couldn't be accounted for during the murders. Prosecutors methodically laid out their case, detailing all the actions and evidence that pointed to Craig's guilt. Craig's defense insisted he was innocent, explaining away all his actions and blaming his bruises on his alleged fall. His mother Linda and his brother Chris stood firmly by his side. Linda even took the stand and testified that she did not believe that Craig had been the one to attack her or kill her husband and son.
Do you remember giving a description of the person that you saw shoot Philip and yourself?
A slender man.
You weren't able to give any other better descriptions than that or see any more detail than that?
No.
Has he said anything to you during those meetings or in your time with him to give you any reason after this happened that he was involved?
No.
She would later state, "I know my child. I know the man he is. I know the heart he has. He does not have a cold-blooded heart. I can be certain that Craig did not do this to our family." Chris echoed the same support, certain that his brother was not capable of such a crime. But Robin testified against him. Regarding her relationship with Craig, she testified that, "I wasn't comfortable with the relationship anymore." She said that after some soul-searching, she realized that the man she once loved just might be a murderer. On the stand, she described Craig's disdain toward his father.
Craig said that if his father was on fire, that he would not urinate on his father to put him out.
Robin was asked to describe Carrie.
Are you married?
No, sir, I'm widowed.
And who were you married to?
I was married to Carrie Heidt,
How long were you married?
13 years. We had a very good, very prosperous living. Yes, sir.
Did you ever lack for anything?
No,
Was he always able to provide you anything you needed?
he was.
What kind of husband was
He was a very good husband. He was the best father. He was a wonderful father.
The family remained torn. And while authorities believed that Linda knew deep down who had pulled the trigger, they felt she couldn't bring herself to destroy what was left of her family by turning on one of her 2 remaining sons. Ultimately, it was in the hands of the jury. Initially, the jury was split, 8-4 in favor of not guilty. But after 6 hours of deliberation, that changed. Craig Heidt was found guilty on all 11 counts, including malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, burglary, attempted arson, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. He was sentenced to 2 life terms, plus 85 additional years. In 2012, Craig Heidt appealed his conviction and lost. Today, life in Effingham County has returned to normal, but the suspicion still lingers. The sheriff noted that he still sees Robin around town and says the community continues to ask when she'll be arrested. He tells them only if new evidence emerges. Robin insists there's nothing to find. She claims she didn't conspire with Craig or wish harm on anyone. When asked whether she has forgiven herself, she answered, "I have, and I know that God's forgiven me." When asked whether she thinks the Heidt family has forgiven her, she replied, "Not really sure. You'd have to ask them." When Linda Heidt was asked about Robin's role in the crime, she replied that she would rather not comment. Once a name synonymous with success in Effingham County, the Heidts are now remembered for one of the most shocking family tragedies Georgia has ever seen. In September 2010, while Craig was still awaiting trial, another tragedy struck the family. Robin's brother, John Henry Rast, died by suicide at her home. John, who was also very good friends with Carrie, had been cleared early in the investigation. There's no public record of how he felt about Robin after Carrie's death, whether he blamed her, supported her, or kept quiet. But the fact that he was at her home and possibly staying there may suggest there may not have been animosity between them. In November 2011, 3 years after the murders and less than a year after Craig's conviction, Robin Heidt remarried and relocated to South Carolina with her 3 children and new husband. The court granted joint custody of the children to both Robin and Linda. Philip and Linda Heidt spent an entire lifetime building a family name that meant something. In an instant, Craig Heidt made it mean something else entirely. That's it for this case. If you have any thoughts, please share them in the comments below. And please remember that if you like our case coverage, we'd be grateful if you could hit like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate you.